Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Merrimack School Board this Tuesday evening, September 2nd, 2014. Would you rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Happy first day of school, everyone. Have one quick announcement. I haven't heard from Student Representative Crowley, so she may be late, or it being the first day of school, she may be excused from tonight's meeting. Item number 2 on tonight's agenda is approval of the August 11th, 2014 minutes. Is there a motion? Made by Mr. Schneider, seconded by Vice Chair Barnes. Any corrections? Mr. Schneider.
I just have one that I found on page 3 on line 106. It says Mr. Tuso explained that the discussion would focus on entering, exiting the APR should be at James Mastacola Upper Elementary School without going through the school. And that's all I had.
Great. Any other corrections? Mr. Powell.
On page 7, line 307, if we could just make it Board Member Powell. That's it.
That happens every now and then. Any others? Ms. Guglielmi.
On line 175, Ms. Board Member Guglielmi asked, it says if there were any other uses for the APR, it should read what other public uses there are for the APR when school is in session, or actually just what other uses there are for the APR period.
Great. And I had just 2 others. On page 5, line 199, I think it would be more clear if we were told that they needed one and only one handicapped accessible entrance. So if we could add the words "and only one." And then on that same page, line 218, if we could just strike the words "that took place." So regarding a joint meeting before his untimely passing, just strike those other words, and I think that is it. So with that, we will put the minutes to a vote. All those in favor of approving the August 11th, 2014 minutes as amended signify by saying aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Mr. Powell, did your hand go up? Okay.
Yes.
So that motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you. And that takes us to item number 3 on tonight's agenda, public participation. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board. All we ask is that you come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone looking to address the board under public participation? Seeing none, I'll close public participation and we'll move to item 4, the consent agenda. Dr. Mark McLaughlin.
Thank you. I have the following teacher nominations for you this evening. Alyssa Grease, language arts teacher at Merrimack Middle School. Jamie Phillip, special education teacher at Merrimack Middle School. Leanne Rossi, part-time world language teacher at Merrimack Middle School. In addition, I have the following administrator nomination. Michelle Romaine, assistant principal at Mastacola Elementary School.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Vice Chair Barnes.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second? Ms. Guglielmi seconds that. All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That motion carries 5-0-0 as well. And that takes us to item number 5, Interim New England School Development Council, or NESDEC, report regarding consolidation of the superintendent and special education offices. I'd like to invite to the table Mr. John Kennedy from NESDEC, who has been on the ground working with the district, conducting the study, to give us an update on how things have been going. Welcome, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you very much.
Just make
Pleasure.
sure your the green light on that microphone is
Yeah,
on by
that's
pushing the
on.
button.
Maybe I move it.
Try it. Try.
Testing 1, 2.
I think that's working.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And I first of all wanted to say it's a pleasure to be here. And the drive up was wonderful. Not a bit of traffic, so that's an unusual situation, and I appreciated that. I would also like to compliment the district and the administration for engaging in thoughtful, forward-thinking planning. This is a great opportunity to take a look at an issue and to analyze it and engage in the planning process is something that you should be complimented for. Excuse me. I also want to mention, and I can't emphasize this enough, as we started the project and ever since then, we have had tremendous cooperation from everyone, from the central office folks, the business office, special services, and at each of the district schools. And so I want to certainly extend my thanks on behalf of NESDEC for that. And I want to note also, it is very, very refreshing to see the enthusiasm with which people move forward here in this district. It was the positive outlook everywhere we went. What can we do to help? And that certainly is appreciated, and it makes our task much easier and much more enjoyable. So thank you all for, has been a wonderful experience. A little bit about NESDEC. I know you're familiar with us, but the organization, New England School Development Council, NESDEC, sometimes my wife will confuse it with NEASC, NASCAR, various other, but NESDEC. And we have been in operation for over 60 years. The organization originated out of the Harvard School of Education. We are a nonprofit organization, and at this point, I believe we have over 200 school district affiliates within New England. The district, the NESDEC is involved in the goal is to try to help districts solve problems. And so therefore, we're involved in executive searches for districts. We assist them with that. We do demographic studies. Currently, we are doing enrollment projections for approximately 240 districts in New England on an annual basis. We are involved in strategic planning. And lastly, and most pertinent here, we are involved in facility best use studies. So we have been asked by the district to complete a facility best use study. And the team that will be working on this, my colleague, and this causes confusion as we go from place to place, his name is Donald Kennedy. So it's Don and John Kennedy, and sometimes with phone calls to the office that can be a little confusing. But he is very experienced, and he is the person who handles much of our demographic analysis and our enrollment projections. And we work as a team. Also on the team is Arthur Betancourt, who is our executive director, and obviously I'm involved with the team as well. We all have a few things in common. We are all former classroom teachers, and we are all former district administrators at a particular level. So in moving forward with this, we were asked by the district to provide an update of student enrollment projections. And that will be taking place once we receive your October 1 numbers, and we will include that in the report. And the idea will be to see if there are any changes in trending that you have seen over the past several years historically, and we will be providing that information for you. We also have been asked to review the school facilities to determine capacity and suitability. We have been asked to do an analysis and an appraisal of present and future educational needs in relation to school facilities in this district, SAU number 26. When we do that, it's important to understand we do use best practice standards and apply those to what we see as we are going into the various schools, and also with regard to programming, so that we are able to make analysis based on what are considered to be the most advanced and best practice procedures. And that gives us good guidance. And lastly, we have been asked to provide commentary regarding the feasibility of locating the central office, administration, and special services offices in one of the currently existing public schools facilities. Okay, so that's essentially the scope of the project, what we have been requested by the district to do. Progress update. At this point, the study has, NESDEC has completed the following pieces of the study. We have reviewed key documents provided by the district, and they relate to the district facilities. So what are we talking about there? We have reviewed floor plans. We have reviewed square footage information for each of the schools, and it provided us with information, detailed information on classroom sizes, so on and so forth. Site acreage information, the age of the buildings, which is an important factor. We have received information on capital improvement plans and capital expenditures. We have also received a summary of district administrative office space needs, an original summary, and we will be updating that with some interviews, but we received that information. Regarding programming, we also have received a tremendous amount of information and had an opportunity also, I always do this, to look at each of the district websites and school websites, and able to take a look at the mission statements, programming, activities, and so on that are tied to those. We've also reviewed some of the previous studies that have been done. So this gives us a good sense of what the district is about, so to speak, what has been taking place, and it helps us as we move into different aspects of the study. So that piece has been completed. Also, and this is key, we have had a chance to review preliminary facility planning surveys which were distributed to each of the building principals. And they were completed and they were returned to us in a timely fashion, which helped us to keep the project moving. And these are very important because they deal with such topics as current space utilization of classrooms, class sizes, specialized programming at each of the schools. They tell us about the core facilities, meaning things such as the cafeteria, if available, an auditorium, if not, a cafetorium. They talk in terms of library space and so on and so forth. Technology capacity, and I've been impressed with the expansion of that and the planning to expand that within the district. That's very good to see. I think it means you're on top of things. And that's a real plus. We also, in these surveys, get information on operational situations. For example, handicapped accessibility and spaces for adequate space for parking and pick-up, drop-off of students and so on, field and play space. So this all is completed ahead of time, and what this does is two things. Number one, when we go into a school, it helps us to have a sense of the situation in advance. And so I guess a comparison, if you go into somebody's house and you already know what the floor plan looks like, that's helpful. If you have an idea of what's taking place, it's very helpful to us. So that we analyze before we get there, and that expedites the process, and it also makes it move a little bit more efficiently. So two goals there. So with all of that done, we then went ahead and we have, with the help of administration, been able to schedule site visits at all of the schools as well as the central office. Now, they haven't all taken place yet, but the schedule is in place and ready to go. In terms of the actual site visits, we have conducted 3 site visits already. And those took place at Thornton's Ferry, Reed's Ferry, and also at the high school. And with those, I can say we did the high school on the 18th of August and did Reed's Ferry and Thornton's Ferry on the 14th. And the building principals in all cases were present and were very, very helpful. And so what takes place is we go in, we sit down, we talk about the information that we have gained already in the survey that they have completed. The survey is almost like a NIASC kind of thing. It kind of has them consider all kinds of different pieces that are related to their school. And so we review that with them, and then we get into programming. And the key goal, really, the number one focus point of the site visits, meetings during the site visits, is to talk in terms of the school's capacity to meet programming needs, the facility's capacity to meet programming needs. We also deal with many other issues, but obviously that is the key issue. Is this facility, what is its capability with regard to meeting programming needs, and at what student capacity can it continue to do that? All right, so that's the piece that we consider. Once we have gone through the facility planning surveys and talked about key operational topics, we then go ahead and do a full tour of the building, and the principal guides us through the tour. And oftentimes, as we're going down a particular corridor, they will be telling it, now see, this is what I mentioned to you back in the office, and we get a chance to see it, okay? Now, that has taken place, and therefore 3 schools the tours have been completed. We will then also, I had an opportunity with the help of folks at the central office, Matt and Sandy were in, and the superintendent facilitated the process, and I was able to take a walkthrough of the central office to look at the program, the accommodations there for the office staff, and then also crossed the street and took a look at the special services building and received the same kind of very positive assistance in taking me through those different spots. So this is essentially what's taken place up to this point. Now, what's next on the agenda? During the remainder of this month, September already, and October, we will be completing the project. And so the next step will be, one of the next steps will be site visits, and tomorrow morning I will be visiting the middle school. All right, so that will be tomorrow. And then on the 16th of the month, we will be visiting the Mastrocola Upper and the elementary. And so by the 16th of this month, all site visits will be completed. However, We will be going back to Thornton's Ferry, Reed's Ferry, and the high school for an abbreviated visit because NESDEC never completes a site visit without the students in the school. We want to see what it's like with the students there. We were able to get a jump on things with the earlier site visits, meet with the building principals and so on, and get information, but we want to see it when the students are in the school. And so that will be taking place as well. And then we will obviously be having numerous follow-up conversations with members of the central office and the building principals. And then, after having completed that, we will be doing our capacity analysis for each of the schools. Okay. And with that, we will come up with what we call the planned operating capacity. The planned operating capacity means that if all appropriate instructional spaces are in use and given particular class sizes that are considered to be within standard, what would be the capacity of the building? So let me give you an example. If we go to a school and we see that, for example, closet space has been converted to small group instruction space, or in some extremes, if classes are being held in the hallways, or those types of things, then that would be the current operating capacity of the school, but it would not be up to the standards that, and so therefore, the planned operating capacity would deduct those numbers, okay? And so we will present you with a planned operating capacity for each of these schools. And that is a key piece, obviously. And then beyond that, we will be taking a look at the updated space needs summary for SAU 26. Obviously, we want to just make sure that these are the updated needs for the central office and special services. By the early in the first week in October, we will have your new enrollment projections. And then we get to the point where we say, okay, we have an analysis. This analysis tells us the capacity of each of the schools. And we also have enrollment projections, which tell you what you can anticipate down the road in terms of student enrollments. And based on that, we will draw some conclusions in terms of the ability of any of the buildings to accommodate central office or special services space.
Make it sound simple.
Well, you folks have made it a lot easier, as I said earlier.
Well, I thank you for mentioning that, although it doesn't surprise me. Are you open to some questions from the board?
Certainly am.
I'll start with Vice Chair Barnes and work my way down.
Okay, I'll start from the, I had a couple of questions. They're all over the place because my
that's
writing's
fine.
terrible because I'm trying to keep up with you. First was, you were talking a couple of times about October 1st numbers driving your analysis. How granular will that data be?
Well, we don't expect that you're going to see an overnight change in versus this year or so on, but it is important to have the most recent enrollment data available. And so what it does is we will give you a 10-year projection, and the 10-year projection will be by grade groupings. So therefore, it will break down to pre-K 4, and then it will have your upper level, and it will also have your middle school and your high school projections. And so it's a very helpful, we find. I don't think you're going to see that there's going to be a turnaround in terms of trends, but we do notice that there are changes from year to year in districts which affect the long-term projections.
So, well, I guess my question is, especially when it gets to middle and high school numbers, will it be down to the subject matter level? So, you know,
No,
the number, so it's not
no.
going to get down to like what programs students are electing to take and where that create space and demands
No,
for that?
it includes the grade 9, 10, 11, 12 numbers, but it will not be talking in terms of biology or
Right, and
specific.
that's exactly where I was going with that, so,
Yep.
okay. Another question, you talked about programming, and you went to the websites of the different schools in the district for information on what programs we have available. Is that your sole source of information on those programs, or is the building leadership giving you a comprehensive list as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we will have, for example, the high school program of studies and the information, and also the building principals are giving us indicators in terms of what programming changes they are anticipating down the road, expansions or things along those lines. And that's extremely important because if you're thinking in terms of bringing, for example, technology, the expansion of technology into instruction is taking place all over the country. But one of the key impediments is a particular facility capable of dealing with that and accommodating that. And that would be just one example. But we will be talking about any new programming needs, and also we asked very specifically, are there areas where programming is impeded because of facility limitations?
You also talked about planned operating capacity for your report, and you mentioned that things that are, say, instruction done in halls and repurposed closets may not be considered part of the planned operating capacity. Will there be like an addendum of all those circumstances that you found in the district that don't meet the plan?
If we find that an instructional space is not within what we would consider to be the standard, then there would be a reduction in the planned operating capacity, and there would be a notation as to why.
Good, so we'll know which things just
You would know which
are
things.
happening, but aren't happening in an ideal location.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
In other words, if we were to see, for example, in many districts that we travel to, not necessarily the case here, but in many districts that we travel to, we may find that closet space without windows, without real ventilation, so on and so forth, which was not designed for instruction, may be converted to be, an instructional space. And if we find that, then we deduct that from the planned operating capacity, and we make a notation so that
So you can see
people
how
understand.
frequently and where it's happening and why
Yep.
it's happening and those kind of things.
Yep.
And how it's being used. So that's,
Mhm.
And then my final question is about raw data, because you're going to get a lot of information, but you're going to give us a summarized report. Are we getting the raw data at the end of the study as well that you're collecting?
Pardon me? I didn't.
Raw data. So all
Raw
the
data?
will we be getting the raw data as well as the summary that you'll be presenting?
Well, you'll be getting the information as we put it together. You'll be getting raw data in terms of the enrollments, what the numbers are. But it's an ultimate or a final report. So we take notations that as we go through. We don't turn those notations over for a number of reasons, one of which is we're actually writing or typing as we're going, and they're notes that have to, and so what we want to do is put them together in a cohesive format so that the reader understands them.
Yeah, because the one thing I put down was surveys, et cetera. So as you're surveying a building, you may be coming up with some information that we hadn't considered, and it may not fit into the space planning question, but it could provide us information about demands or needs or wants of a building that we don't necessarily have identified.
Right. And the report is more comprehensive than the zeroing in focus point in terms of capacity and so on. If other issues come up, we do include those in what we call the notes for a particular school.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Schneider?
Yeah, a couple. Sort of to the flip side, you've talked about situations where space is being utilized inappropriately, so you'd say the capacity of the school would be less than what we're utilizing it for. On the flip side, does your report also call out if there's areas that we're maybe underutilizing in terms
Absolutely.
of space?
We take a look at vacant spaces, or there are, in most schools, there are not vacant spaces because just like we are at home, if there's a vacant space, we usually find something to put there. And so that is true. However, if we find a space that was, for example, a former classroom that is then being used for storage, or if we find things along those lines, that is noted, and the planned operating capacity rises as a result of that. And and we do see that as we travel from place to place. So some places we go, we see that spaces were not designed for instruction, but are being used for that. In other situations, we see that spaces that were designed for instruction are being used for some other use, and depending on what that is, we may boost the planned operating capacity.
Okay. And my second question was, when you talk about, so you build a 10-year planning trend, of what you think the population will do. Do you work with the town planning to see what the town has planned for residents and new developments and stuff? The only reason I ask is because we know from conversations we've had on the school board that there are developments being considered that there's school land involved. If you believe some of the things you hear, there are like apartments or things that Flatley owns land and parts. So
really?
there's a possibility that there could be more population in Merrimack, even though we think it's built out. There
Right.
could be some opportunities. So I guess, do you look at that data when you look at your trending?
We look at it in terms of getting, we do a permitting history for the community, and we take a look at building permits and the history of the building permits over a period of time, including and up to the present year. And that gives us some information. We also are aware of various, we're members of the New England Economic Partnership, and as they run as a matter of fact, it's coming up in usually November, and I usually attend those meetings. And with that, there is a presentation for each of the states where they then will give specific details with regard to areas of the state and what they are projecting in terms of housing growth and so on and so forth. And we also have reports from various other groups that will provide us with regional information. The study itself is not a full-fledged demographic study, which is something that we do as another a project. But we do have basic data in terms of, if there's a surge. Now, we're seeing that in some communities. They're telling us we've had a very slow period of time, and now all of a sudden we have 120 housing permits that have been issued. That's very, something like that is significant, and it would be rolled into our calculations.
Right. My only comment is we're looking at a 10-year projection here. In the case of Merrimack, there may not be permits that exist today, but there may be ones that the local community development team might know or have some ideas, because I know that there's several things that are being discussed in flight. So it's just to make sure that you have a full, robust sort of view of what Merrimack will be like over the next 10 years.
Yeah, and I will just an aside, but this is something that is being reviewed everywhere, and it's the wild card. What are the baby boomers going to do? And the question is tied, many people say, well, how's that related to schools? And the question is this: they are turning 65 at the rate of 10,000 a day nationally. That will continue for another 16 years. And so the question that has come up in many instances, and it's not answered yet, but the question that has come up is, what percentage of the baby boomers will downsize? And if they do, what will they be vacating? And in most cases, it's going to be a 3 or 4 bedroom home. And Realtors that we do talk to on occasion, most recently have told us that last winter had a major influence on many of the baby boomers. And they were saying, do I really want to do this again? And so there's, that is a factor, and you're absolutely right. We do try to track as much as we can.
Any other questions, Andy, or are you all set? Okay, Ms. Guagliumi.
I just had a question. Earlier in your presentation, you had mentioned that you use best practice procedures.
Yes.
Are those procedures based on working with other districts from the council, or are there other
The-
sources? And
Well, the answer to your question is yes, yes. We are, obviously, we visit hundreds of schools, and we see what practices are taking place. But we also use national standards that help us in order to make determinations as to how, and regional standards. So, for example, we do pay great attention to what the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development comes out with in their analysis. They're a national organization which engages the thinking of some of the best educators and educational researchers in the country. We also pay, obviously, very heavy attention to what NEASC, the New England Accrediting Association, is looking for in terms of their standards. So it's a combination of what we see as best practice and also what research says is best practice, and we apply that.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Any other questions? I want to thank my colleagues for asking such good questions. I had made a list during your presentation, and everybody caught at least one or more of the points that I had hoped to ask. I was very heartened to hear as you went through your presentation and talked about the visits you had already made, that you came back and said that you were going to revisit, perhaps in a more abbreviated fashion, since you'd already done the due diligence, those schools, because like you, I agree, looking at a capacity question in an empty school is
Right.
somewhat lacking. I appreciate the progress report, your answers to the questions. I think folks asked you very good ones, and we look forward to the report. As you mentioned in your intro, the board, in discussing this and deciding to go through with this, views it exactly in the context that you said, which is as a very important strategic document to allow us to make perhaps difficult decisions, but certainly well-informed decisions about where we're headed and how we get there. And so I very much appreciate your work to date, your coming tonight, and we very much look forward to having you back in the near future for the presentation.
Okay, well, that's great, and thank you all for your questions, and I think that we are on a good track.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Okay, thank you. Night now.
Good night. Have a safe trip.
Thanks.
That note takes us to item number 6, update on district wellness efforts. I would invite to the table Mr. Rick Grenier, physical education teacher at James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School and the chair of the District Wellness Committee.
Good evening, everyone. Nice
Welcome.
to see you, board and administrators. I invited Jen up, one of my colleagues from Thornton's Ferry, because unfortunately, some of the great happenings from Thornton's were omitted from this list, and I wanted to give her the opportunity to share those with you because she's done such a great job there, along with many other teachers at the school. So, as you may already know, I've been the chair of this board for about a year now, a little over a year. And it's been really interesting taking a look at how much is going on at each school. And exciting for me to report to you because there is so much good stuff happening. So I'm going to try to make some sense of this for you and explain whatever you'd like, of course, and try to be concise at the same time. So we're also joined tonight by a few of my colleagues, including Miss Hansberry from Reed's Ferry, who was recently married, and that new name is Mrs. Sabati. Also Sean Croto, who's at MES, and Jen joined me, and Dawn Kerrigan from the middle school. And many other colleagues that you may be aware of that are contributing to this policy and helping make Merrimack a healthier district. So I'll start at MES with a couple of programs that involve regular physical movement, trying to improve academic performance at the same time. And I'm referring to School Moves, K through 4, and Wednesday Minute Moves. Short opportunities for kids to get some exercise and get out of their seats. Sean and the staff there have also participated in Walk New Hampshire, Just Dance, various wellness themes, Jump Rope for Heart, staff volleyball, staff dodgeball, and even staff Zumba. So there's a lot going on in that building. I'm going to move down to Reed's Ferry, who has one of the most successful wellness nights I've been to as a parent as well. They're also participating in our Jump Rope for Heart events. They've created a fitness fun day, and they've also participated in staff flag football. And this has become quite an annual competition between Reed's Ferry and some of the other schools, including the upper elementary. Moving down to my school that I'm working at, the upper elementary school, we've had an intramural program going on for the last couple of years now, giving children an opportunity after school to participate in a slightly more competitive sports environment. We've also had things like gardening clubs, an annual 3K that we've created called the Harvest 3K. In fact, it's just weeks away. We have things like chess clubs, staff flag football, staff basketball, as some of you may be aware of, competing against our local police department. And Jump Rope for Heart, Hoops for Heart, and a program you may be familiar with sponsored by the NFL called Play 60, encouraging 60 minutes of exercise daily. Jen, I'll let you review what you've completed at Thornton's Ferry, and then we'll move on to the middle school.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Okay.
Yes, we can.
For students, we do, and I think throughout the district, we do Jam Day, which we take just a minute jam, and we participate in a 60-second activity. And on, I think it's the last Thursday in September, we try to set world records with schools throughout the whole country, with everyone, simultaneously being active at 10 o'clock in your respective time zone. So I'm sure we'll be up for the challenge again this year. So you can be active at 10 o'clock on the last Thursday with us if you'd like. In PE class, we do Just Dance with the Wii and kind of show the kids that they can be active and play video games. We're also doing sport folios where we have pedometers and heart rate monitors. And we'll keep track of that and use math. With the wellness committee, we host a wellness week where we focus on physical, mental, and social health because they're all equally as important. This year, our artist in residence is hopefully going to be a phys ed related artist in residence, so that's kind of exciting. And we also partnered with the wellness team. Also partnered with the parent teacher group this year, last year. It all blends together to do a family fitness challenge where we were able to promote physical activity and raise some money for the school. And for the staff, we have a running club, a snowshoeing club, and we do a pedometer, Hoofing It for Health right around, right after the holidays. So we try to start those New Year's resolutions right off to on a good foot, I guess. Okay. I'm done.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
Moving down to the middle school, you can see that they've also participated in Hoops for Heart, a basketball version of Jump Rope for Heart, essentially. Let's Move, Play 60, and also intramural sports. And at the high school, they have participated in intramurals as well, and several other fundraisers that are wellness related, like the 5K Race for Haiti that some of you might be familiar with, and a sneaker program that's also related to wellness in regards to one of our former students. Dave couldn't be here tonight, but I've included in our packet some changes to our lunch program, and specifically I'm referring to Smart Snacks. I believe you'll find that just behind this. And Smart Snacks is basically a federal guideline to try to make the snacks that we're offering a little bit healthier for our students, and as well as our staff that choose to purchase those. Dave has also made some changes to the vending machines in many of our buildings. Currently at JMU's, we are kind of trying out a healthier version of the traditional vending machine with healthier choices, and so far it's I think been pretty successful. I think students as well as the staff in our buildings want to try to make healthier changes. They just need a little push. And finally, at the bottom, our new initiatives, what we're hoping to accomplish in the next year is to publicize and create a district wellness calendar primarily for staff, so that staff members can go onto this calendar on their computer and find out what's occurring in any one of our schools on any given day. I'm trying to take a broader approach to the wellness aspect regarding staff, not limiting it to just what's going on in their building, but giving them a chance to head over to another building, which not only provides opportunities for them, but also creates camaraderie within our district. So I think the calendar is going to be a great addition once we can get it up and running. And again, we'll just make it easier for staff to participate. Another thing that we're hoping to do in the near future is roll out a nutrition program, which I'm hoping Health Trust will help us sponsor, providing a short seminar on healthy eating habits for all of our staff members. As you may have seen earlier on this notation, we ran a Smoothies for Stress program in the spring, and we tied it into a seminar on stress. So we're thinking of doing the same thing essentially with nutrition and trying to add a little fun to it as well. And we're also in the process of trying to create a newsletter, something that we think is very important to reach the parents of our students. We realize that no matter how much we attempt to educate our students on what wellness and good nutrition really looks like, ultimately, especially for many of our elementary students, it boils down to their parents. So we're hoping that a simple, concise newsletter might help them make positive choices for their children. And we're also in the process of recruiting a couple of new members for our committee, as a couple of students have graduated. And that's essentially it at this time.
Great. Wonderful report. Are you open for some questions
Absolutely.
from the board?
Sure.
Who would have the first question? Mr. Schneider.
Well, it's not so much a question as it is a comment, because I'm the liaison into the Wellness Committee. So we meet we meet twice last year, maybe 3 times.
Quarterly.
Quarterly. So, and it's really good because it's a good brainstorming. They get reps from all the different schools that are there. I go, and they have healthy snacks, which is, I guess, good and bad at the same time. But we talk about things, and Dave Zicki goes, which is really helpful because he talks about what's going on with the lunch program, and especially the new snack program that's the initiatives there. I encourage everybody to sort of read what that is, because it is a little eye-opening in terms of what the change is going to be. But this is a really good program, you know. A lot of good ideas are brought out there, and I think you're right. I think by doing a district calendar and then a newsletter to really raise awareness is the most important thing.
I
Because
agree.
the ideas are there, it's just maybe people don't know about them, so.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions? Vice Chair Barnes?
It's actually more of a comment. I believe Thornton's Ferry a couple of years ago was recognized by the state of New Hampshire for some of the wellness initiatives with their trail program.
That and Thornton's Ferry and Reed's Ferry both got the HEAL Award, which was recognition for all that had taken place in a given period of time.
So that's, probably foundation of your work as well. So know that, we're getting an annual report from you, but this is something that's been continual and recognized by the state of New Hampshire for the efforts we're doing right here. So it's, to be commended, and thank you for all the work that you are doing. And for that reason, I have no questions. So
Thank
thanks.
you.
To piggyback off the HEAL Award, it's been offered for 3 years through the state of New Hampshire, and Merrimack schools have earned it 2 out of the 3 years. So that shows a lot, I think, about our district.
That's a very good point. Any other questions? In looking at the list, it's a very comprehensive list, but I think as well, if you think about it, we all know of at least 1 or 2 other programs, maybe more, that could have fit into this, right? I think at the upper elementary school, we've got the Jogging Jaguars Club, right?
That's
Which
correct.
may have been folded under intramurals. But even, our Safe Routes to School and the walk and bike to school days, right? That's about wellness as well. All of this is very important, both just from an educational, actually multifold, an educational standpoint. Also, everyone's well-being, obviously. But you also mentioned the Healthcare Cost Containment Committee and Health Trust and how all of this ties in. On an annual basis, we pay quite a bit for healthcare for staff, and those rates continue to rise. And a lot of the cost of that, or the increases, are experiential, right, and what we experience. And so to the extent that we as a district are focused on wellness, not only for the staff, but also for the students, and just making ourselves healthier, it has not only a beneficial standpoint from strong bodies, clear minds, but there's a financial impact as well. So I thank you for the report and the continuing work in making sure that the district stays well.
Thanks very much. Thank you for having us.
And on behalf of my fellow colleagues, I just want to thank Rick for everything that he's done to put this wellness group together, and all the hard work he's done, and an open invitation to all of you to come join our PE classes anytime you'd like.
Oh, boy.
Bring your sneakers.
Thank
For
you.
Zumba night.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That takes us to item number 7, presentation of capital improvement plan for 2015 to 2020. Those are years. I thought it might make sense to just, before I introduce Business Administrator Chevenel and Mr. Tom Tuso, to talk a little bit about the capital improvement plan and process. We go through this every year, and sometimes we cover what the process is, and I think some years we probably don't do that, and it's been some time, and so I thought it might be worthwhile to just kind of walk through what the capital improvement plan is and how it fits into our budgeting process. So on an annual basis, a capital improvement plan is reviewed, drawn up, and amended by administration preliminarily. And what it represents are those large item projects that the district needs to plan for over a multi-year period. In other words, what needs to be done sooner rather than later, and how can we balance these things out, not unlike what any of us would do in terms of looking at our household expenses. Do we get a new roof the same year we get a new driveway? and a new sprinkler system, or do we prioritize one before the other and move that forward? That plan is then taken to the school's Planning and Building Committee for review and possible amendment. And then, after that's been approved by the Planning and Building Committee, the capital improvement plan is taken to the school board, and that's where we are in this process. After the school board approves the CIP, it's taken to the town's planning board, and they review it. And they also review the town's capital improvement plan, as well as Village District. Thank you. And it's a planning document that we use in order to map out when and what projects we'll do in what time frames. That being said, the numbers that we're reviewing in the capital improvement plan are placeholders. They're budgetary numbers, order of magnitude. They're not the detailed cost of each one of those items. We may find cheaper ways of doing those things. We may find ways of financing those projects at budget time. But in our capital improvement planning process, we need to view them as these blocks of work that need to be done. And so tonight, we will hear from Mr. Chevenel and Mr. Tuso on the capital improvement plan that was approved by the school's Planning and Building Committee just last week. We will take this information in. At our next meeting, we can review and move items and ultimately approve the capital improvement plan that will then be taken to the planning board. And then come the winter through January, right up until we go to town meeting and vote, items that are on this plan for the subsequent year can be looked at in terms of detailed estimates that will actually make it either into our budget and or a warrant article for approval. But at this point in the process, we're really just talking about the big blocking and tackling, as it were. So hopefully that makes sense to the board and hopefully everyone at home as to what it is we're doing. And so I'd invite to the table Mr. Tom Tuso, and I would turn the floor over to Mr. Chevenel.
Thank you very much. As you can see, Tom is passing around his roof maps that have become quite popular for everybody. And we'll go over that as the second item in our presentation. I'd like to take it and go vertically for the first column at least, to talk about 15-16, which is our most pressing needs and our greatest priority. The first item you see is MHS HVAC equipment. And we have there the Merrimack High School heat wheel, which we've been talking about for a couple of years now. And the price there is a maximum cost of around $500,000. And this is one of the benefits of talking with Planning and Building Committee in a relaxed environment where people can say what's on their mind and just kind of bat ideas around and see, kind of what could be the possibilities, or if there are any different possibilities that could be involved. Mr. Gage Perry, who's a member of the Planning and Building Committee, mentioned something about a cross-plane
plate and frame
device that could do the same thing or accomplish the same task as the heat wheel. One has to remember that the heat wheel is original, it's like 1970s version kind of technology. They're still in use today, they're still viable today, but there could be, at this point in time, seeing that we're getting close, a need to look at other options out there that would take the place of this, perhaps cost less, provide the same level of service, and not create the overwhelming drone that one hears in the high school cafeteria that I know everybody misses here by being in this venue, to try and temper the cold air before it comes into the building and to heat it up at that point. That's the whole purpose of the heat wheel. So we're going to be speaking about this, but we're going to be speaking about this in different terms and perhaps a different engineering design. So I'd like to leave that there as a placeholder at this point in time. And if there's any discussion on that, I don't have specifics, but we are working on specifics. If we just like to go on to the roofing right now. Tom has his maps of many colors here. He uses nice bright primary colors because he knows I'm colorblind. If he uses, muted shades of blues and grays and greens and browns, I'd be all messed up. But I appreciate the red, white, and the blue here, Tom. So if you could take us through the roofing portion for next year for $856,000, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. What you see is two areas on this map colored, Section A and Section B. Those two areas that are shaded are the two that are up for replacement this coming year. They in total 36,438 square feet, and the estimated price would be $856,105. There are areas of the roofs that are in greatest need for our district to be replaced. Area B was considered last year, and we decided to split our two roofs area. And this year, they're both, when I look at them, both Section A and B both have the same need. I believe, unlike the last time we talked about it, that we could pause or we could split them apart. I don't know if we have that option this time. Well, we certainly do if you decide to, but my opinion is they both warrant being done at this time, and I don't see a possible split. These roofs all are indicating, besides their actual age, you see weather on the roof, weather marks, meaning like some of the seams are starting to show wear. You're seeing some bubbling. We do have some leaks in some of the areas. We had repairs done last year, which we do every year to maintain our roofs in good shape. But we did quite a bit of repairs last year in Section B. So that's project sits out there as you can see, the square footage as far as the cost estimate. Until we put it out to bid, we don't have anything exact, but that's our best estimate at this time. So if you have any questions about this, roofing?
Are there any questions about roofing? Vice Chair Barnes.
Can you just give it, you don't have to give a scientific answer, but if you have one, I'll take it. How much in repairs did we expend for roofing, especially, you're talking Section B was the area?
I'm thinking we spent quite a bit last year, maybe on Section B. It was roughly, we did between $5,000 and $7,000 probably in that one area, because we had a great deal of leaking, especially over the gym area and stuff, and we kind of repaired that. We got through. I mean, I didn't expect it would be that great, but we were able to do what we had to and made sure it made it through. So we're sitting at the point where we are now, and we're comfortable that it's going to last through until we're ready to replace it, hopefully.
So, and the other question I have is I was looking at what was out of warranty. And E and F are sections that equate to about 34,000 square feet. and they've been out of warranty since 2011, but I don't see MHS Roofing.
They're a little further out. They're actually, well, one of the, part of the process is twice a year, I walk the roofs. And when you're going through all the sections of the roofs that we have, it's roughly 73 sections, so it's never like Reed's Ferry's roof or the middle school's roof or the high school roof. It's divided into, basically, in my world, it's 73 sections. And we take a look at them all, and I got them all on a spreadsheet. And we ended up making a list of priorities. And right now, those roofs are in good enough shape. They sit off the CIP. They are scheduled somewhere, and at some point, you're going to see them come through. But at this point, they're in good enough shape that we believe we don't need to do them in the next few years.
So you feel they're going to go 10 years past warranty?
You know, that is actually my hope for any roof that we do. My hope is we exceed by 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
Does it always happen? No. Is there sometimes the day after they're off warranty, it's time to do a roof? And there's some roofs that we get 10 years, 12, 13 past? Yes, I think that can work. I'm hoping for that even with our brand-new roofs. Even they tell me it's a 30-year warranty, I'm thinking that we're going to get 40 years out of them. Hopefully we get 50, and we don't get 32, but it's kind of, that's a long ways away at this point.
Yeah, see, some of them are 2049 for the warranty. 2059 would be even nicer, but, because I probably won't be voting for that. So, perfect. Those are my questions, really.
Any other roofing-related questions? Mr. Schneider?
Yeah, I'll chime in from time to time with comments of what we discussed at Planning and Building Committee because we went through this and I'm a liaison into it. You'll notice that the section that Tom is talking about that he had to work on, the warranty ended in 2004, and miraculously it was 2014, which is about 10 years. He also said that he was surprised by some of the issues that you ran into that you might not have seen 6 months prior to that. So you kind of hit that hairy edge. So I think if you look at the two roofing sections that are A and B, which expired in '04 and '07, those are obviously the two that you'd want to address. So I think that that's, and we talked about that at the planning building, is what the right one is. The next ones are 2011. They're only a few years out. So, you know, hopefully those will last, you know, that 5 to 10. But you're seeing no signs that they're showing any weakness or anything like that.
I think right now we're on schedule, which is good.
So one of the things the board has reviewed in the past as it relates to the capital improvement plan as backup and supporting material is that longer list of roofing projects that are out there so that we can see that horizon. Because at some point, right, it becomes cyclical, right? The roofs we replaced, 20 years ago or whatever, become candidates, right, in future years. And so having an idea of what that horizon looks like would be helpful. So to the extent that we can look at what the plan is for those roofs before our next meeting, that may be helpful.
Yeah, last time.
Not that it will necessarily adjust the
Right.
5-year horizon, but.
Yeah, last time when I took a look at this, I have my old sheets from last year, and Tom and I have yet to sit down and do the mapping out of the future as we see it here. I had a significant gap of around probably 8 to 9 years, starting in the year 2023, where there were no roofing projects, and then we picked them up again in 2038 and 2039. Well,
So you're telling me, don't worry my pretty little head about those.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of comforting and melancholy to see a warranty that's probably going to outlast me on a piece of paper here in 2049. So, Tom, we won't be talking about these sections, It'll be someone else at these tables. Yeah. So if we keep to the plan, like I said, Tom reiterated that these sections basically are in the same level of need, is that correct?
Yes.
And if one would split one, I don't think you could really recommend which one. It would be toss of a coin, basically, what we're looking at. So I think that's the point he's trying to get across, that we'd really like to do this as one project, coupling that with the heat wheel or whatever device we would come up with, or devices, to accomplish the same thing, to bring fresh air into the building and have a heat exchange happen. One of the things, we'd like to do is to lessen the impact of the noise in that area also. That's another goal that we'll be talking with Honeywell. Marge has her finger up, so.
Go ahead, Superintendent.
I just wanted to add that the reason, too, that this is such an important section is notice that it's over the gym. And the gym floor is a major proposition here. So anything to protect that gym floor, because if that were to have water damage, we're talking about some significant money. Are we not, Tom?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
you are.
I mean, so that's one of those things when he's saying that he's unsure about how long it will hold. I think there's the reason to protect that floor, because that's another whole expenditure.
Understood. Any other roofing questions or comments? Mr. Schneider?
Well, just a couple of points that we made. One, we have to remember that the gym also now contains, or will contain, new bleachers. So that's another consideration to make sure that we do it. And the second thing is the section that's over the cafeteria where the heat wheel is. We did talk a bit in planning and building about whether you had to do them both together. And the answer was you don't have to, but sort of the same logic that we use where you don't want to do the track without doing the field in the middle. You don't want to redo a roof and then have construction guys tromp over it to replace the heat wheel. So you really want to combine those two efforts together just to make sure that you've got a sound structure and the up-to-date materials and stuff. So that's why planning and building supported the whole thing, because of the gym, heat wheel, the whole thing together. So.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, we'll move on.
Yeah, okay, the next item is one that we've been speaking about, the consolidation of special services and the SAU office. Obviously, the precursor to that is to hear the results from Mr. Jim Kennedy, as far as the NESDEC report, as far as our space utilization. Was it Jim or was it John?
John or
Jim.
Don would
John,
have
Don,
been appropriate.
Jim. Sorry about that. Yeah. Mr. Kennedy. He looks like he should be called Mr. Kennedy. He has that presence about him. Anyway, so the NESDEC report that Mr. Kennedy will be providing with us in the discussion, probably a lengthy discussion we'll have on the detailed parameters and the detail of the specific reports and how it relates to this the central office project. We have that down there at 2015-16. Let me remind you, this is, obviously this is a capital improvement plan. It isn't a spending plan, or a tax impact plan. If you, obviously, we had talked about bonding this project, and if you went out with a 10-year bond, your first half year's interest payment would be around $30,000, and then in your highest year, you would be up around $206,000, which would be year 2. And then from that point, it would go down to $152,000 in the year 24, 25, whenever it would be. So, you look at bonding. So the budgetary impact would be perhaps minimal if $200,000 is considered minimal. As far as other bond issues dropping off, the MHS additions still have the addition we put on the high school, the 3-story where the science wings are, so we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more years to go. Middle school, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, around 12 years to go. And the Honeywell Energy retrofit still has around 6 years to go on that. So we're still looking at some bonded debt to shed, but they do stagger. So some of the costs could be ameliorated by some of these dropping off, but not instantaneously. You'd be feeling it right away. The only good part about it is the natural gas project that we got done over our summer vacation. Tom and I said, "So, what did you do over your summer vacation?" Well, we did a roof, we did natural gas, we did all sorts of things. So that's something that I'll let you talk about right now, if you please. But I've just given you kind of the facts and the general overview.
Are there any questions or comments on that, what Business Administrator Chevanel just said? Mr. Powell.
Last year, if I remember correctly, the consolidation project had a higher priority than necessary when it went to the
Yep.
planning board.
I can explain that.
Okay.
Because we had it out 1 year and we didn't have it in 14-15, so we went to the planning board and they, in their rationalization, said, well, if you have it out a year, we don't consider that an urgent need. Therefore, we're going to bump it back to necessary because it's not on this year's priority. It's on next year. That's the only reason. As far as their thoughts on it, it's still positive. I didn't hear any negatives about it whatsoever. But it's just the timing of it, because we had it a year out on the CIP. They just changed it from urgent to necessary.
Well, I don't agree with that, because the need is still there. Just because it was pushed out a year for other reasons doesn't mean that the urgency of it hasn't gone away or hasn't lessened, as far as I'm concerned.
That was just their rationale.
So I hope that when this does go before the planning board, that concern is voiced. Are we still working on 15-16, or are we looking at the rest of it now?
We're in 15-16,
Okay.
and
I have
he
one
was
more
making
item.
his way through. So
Okay,
let's
then I'll hold-
focus on consolidated.
That was the only question I had about 15-16, so I'll hold my remaining remarks.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider.
Yeah, a little bit of color and background on this discussion topic. Obviously, the majority of the Planning and Building Committee are still in favor of a new combined building. We talked at length about that. However, with the NASDAQ evaluation still going on, with sort of the thought that they should look at even old options just to update the data and stuff. There's a lot of discussion in planning and building to look at the whole thing holistically, not necessarily jump to a conclusion of the new building, sort of look at things cleanly. Several people said that they were supportive of having this monetary amount in the CIP to be able to address the consolidation of those, not necessarily jumping to the conclusion that a new building was the pleasure. So, again, there's mixed feelings in the planning and building about whether it's new building or other means to an end, but everyone was in agreement that we have to do something in terms of a consolidation. So as we get more data, as we go through this process, I think that everyone on that believes that we need to do something. The question of how the discussion we have around the DPW, because Town Council Member Rothaus was there, so he sort of represents multiple things, talking about their discussions. I know we've got this as a topic for our joint meeting with the Town Council. So there's a lot of things in play as to how this really shakes out in terms of whether it's a building or whatever. But I think, again, the idea here is a placeholder was felt necessary in this year of that amount to do addressing either the whole thing or a portion of it or whatever, so.
Great. Any other comments or questions on this item? The one thing I would ask, Matt, is as you were presenting this, you referenced a sheet that I think some of us are very familiar with.
It did
that's
print out nicely.
Yes,
It's right here, yeah.
very helpful for planning purposes. I think subsequent to the meeting, if a copy of that could be sent to the board,
Absolutely.
it's very helpful to everybody in looking at these projects and estimating what the potential spikes are year over year and balancing it out with bonded debt and things that are
Yeah.
rolling off. So
I will email that out to everybody.
thank you. Vice Chair Barnes.
On the SAU SPED consolidation, I know you talked about placeholders, but have we been looking at the market value for construction and how it may have shifted since we first looked at this on our CIP?
I don't think we have dipped our toe in that realm yet. I haven't seen a considerable spike, nor have I seen a considerable downturn.
Yeah, we always say the price of oil drives everything, so.
Well, yes, it does. That is correct.
So
If anything, I would think it would probably be a little bit more. Housing market starting to pick up now. Prices are probably the market trend is probably going up a little bit as far as that's concerned.
So that's something we should anticipate as we really review this, as we talk about application of the plan and,
Yeah.
and voting. So that's just something I think we want to keep considering and reminding ourselves of as we review this over and over. And I want to clarify something Andy said about, I know Finley Rothaus, being on the council, that he said he represents multiple factions, but he actually is not representing the town council at planning and building. He just has that counselor insight, I think is what I would say.
That is an accurate statement.
Excellent. I just don't want them
No.
to think that we have
I
a
mean,
liaison to
the
that.
conversation included that
Yeah.
while we grapple with this, they're grappling with the town garage topic.
Absolutely.
And we need to be, both boards need to be aware of the discussions of going on. So
Absolutely.
that's the accurate way to say it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. And the last item we have is I have to thank Nancy Rose for this, because she really helped us in getting away from speaking about technology as stuff and servers and switches and whatnot, and more kind of goal-oriented about bringing the technology into the classroom in a sleek, elegant, seamless sort of way that it works well, it's reliable, teachers depend upon it. It's always available for them, because I know how frustrating it is when you do a PowerPoint and it doesn't work, then you do another one and it doesn't work, and then you shy away from PowerPoints and you pass out paper. Same way teachers feel, if you get a couple of classes wrapped around this technology exercise or using streaming video, and the video isn't streaming and it stutters and stops, the class mumbles. See, the whole basis behind this technology plan is to make it quick, make it reliable, make it available, and it's all for the benefit of the student and the helpful to the teacher involved trying to convey that information. It's not going to be like the teacher looking at the technology and saying, okay, I've got to use this. It's going to be more just not even thinking about it. It's going to be when you get to the point where you're not even going to, you think about it, it's just a part of your normal day. Okay, we're going to be doing this little video in Animoto, and I'm going to show them a little intro to a classroom or a subject or a topic. It's just something that you think about and you do. You don't have to really put a lot of effort into it. It's just there. It's available. It's like your pencils in your desk. They're reliable. So she's gone on, and this plan has spread out over the years. Big piece of this is the Voice over IP project. It has gone extremely well. High school is finished. central office, Tom's building, the Blue House, special ed is finished. We're moving on to the Master Cola complex as we speak, and we're just going to roll right through these schools and hopefully in the next year or two complete the whole voice over IP. And it's definitely something that's needed, and definitely something that is going to pay for itself. It's much like an investment in your future and an investment in the savings that it's going to be bringing, much in like the natural gas. So very happy with that plan that she has put together, and I have to commend her for it. So it's just a continuation. If there's any questions on that, I'd be glad to
Folks
answer.
have any questions on the technology infrastructure upgrade plan? None?
No? Okay. If you want to, let's put Tom on the spot. Let's talk about roofs in the future and get his crystal ball out. Line number 2. He has Reed's Ferry, Thornton's Ferry, the upper elementary school, and then Merrimack Middle School that you see on your 5-year projection. So, Tom, if you'd like to just talk about those. As, these things are your best thinking right now, and they could change depending upon the 76 structure you walk on and look at.
Well, as all the roofs are, we do evaluate them, as I said earlier, twice a year. And walking through the district and walking all our roofs that we have, I see us progressing upon the path that we've laid out right now. I don't see any big jumps where normally we tinker a little bit every now and then, and sometimes a roof that doesn't even appear here this year may be up in 18, 19 next year. I don't see that right now. We're pretty reliable. If we stay, I believe, on this course where we're headed, and we stay right on, we'll be in the same spot, and I don't see too much difference. The roofs, Reed's Ferry roof that we'll be doing in 16, 17, that is the completion of roofs that would complete that school, because we did a series of roofs a couple of years ago. That would end up that. Moving to Thornton's Ferry, we haven't actually had a roofing project at Thornton's Ferry for quite a while now. So that would probably begin the process over at Thornton's Ferry on some of their main roofs that would touch. And that kind of goes right out, all the way out to the middle school at this point. The middle school, when it was built, obviously had a shorter lifespan as far as roofing materials. We had a 10 or 15-year roof put on that. So we're going to see that come a little more forward. I'm not sure right now, when we get out that far, where it's going to be. Will the middle school actually end up in 1920? Will it end up a couple years further? If this year, could it sneak a year quicker? Sure. We might evaluate and move it up. But right now, as I was saying earlier, we're pretty much on par, right exactly where we think we should be. And nothing, as far as the roofings, too much has changed. I don't see any disasters out there. We're not at a point where we were earlier, 2 or 3 years ago when we were doing them. Every time I came and spoke to you, it was an emergency. Hey, we have to do this. We're getting leaks. I don't know. We're having wet insulation. We're having a number of factors that's really starting to concern me. At this point, we're moving on, and we're getting, I hate to say, settling into the groove, knowing that we need to do roofs on a annual basis, and we're progressing nicely, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. You get the feeling like, for once, you're actually behind the wheel of the cruise ship instead of the cruise ship just kind of driving itself, So, because, running a school district with all these buildings and infrastructures and 11 acres of roofs and how many parking lots and fields and whatnot. I mean, this is something you don't twist the wheel around too quickly, or you'll probably fail. So
It is more like a cruise ship.
that's right. Exactly. It's more like a cruise ship. You make a wide, nice turn to get things done, and this is kind of feathered in nicely, this plan, by keeping up with it. The next two, let me just talk about that. Asbestos removal, 2 more projects done.
That's the end of it, huh?
That's the end of it.
Beautiful.
And that's been
Now,
a
that
while.
will be the end of the known
I
asbestos.
know you
I know,
always say that,
I just don't
Tom.
want anybody to say, well, he said it would be completely done. What we do is, that's the stuff that we know about. That's all we believe's there. But every time we do a remodeling, or anytime we go back and we look at the building and we have to reconstruction, we have to test everything. So, when we say this is our outlook 2 more years, we are talking about the known materials that we have. That's all the materials we believe we have, but we cannot be surprised if something small comes up. Nothing shows as being friable or anything dangerous, so we are in a much better place than we were when we started all this abatement stuff. But as we progress in the next over the next 2 years, excluding this year that we're in, the following 2 years, we should be done with all the known stuff at that point.
All the known stuff.
Yes.
Is Marjorie Yin the person still at the state? Or did
No,
they
she
change?
retired.
She retired?
She retired. We have a new
Okay.
person there
You
now.
have a new person? Because Marjorie was Tom's biggest fan because he's so specific and very detailed about his asbestos. So, and that was what she was in charge of at the state level. Yeah, the known asbestos. Yeah, here's an example. When we did the Muse entrance, what did you said? I think Tom said, boy, the caulking around the existing doors, I bet you there's asbestos. And we had it tested, and it was asbestos, and we had to have it abated, correct?
Correct. It was the caulking on the inside, on the inside of the door, not the caulking on the outside of the door, believe it or not. Somehow, it breaks down that way. We never know for sure. You can't really tell. But we do what we're supposed to do. We test, we make sure, and we proceed the way we should.
Yeah. I swear the man has supernatural powers where it comes to detecting asbestos, so we'll make sure. But yeah, this is the end of the known asbestos. The paving projects, Tom, you can chime in anytime you like. We have for 16-17, the circle and the lower lot at Thornton's Ferry. Most of you have been around Thornton's Ferry, have seen the circle. It is in need of repair. I haven't seen it yet this summer. I assume that it's still holding up as is.
Surprisingly holding up very well. I mean, I was surprised. A lot of people have spoken to me and thought that we would only get a few years. It is still holding up well. It's not the prettiest thing you've ever seen. When you walk in, you might
It is
say,
the
oh, it's a little
ugliest
eyesore.
thing I've ever seen in my life, yeah.
But the money we spent to have it sealed and holding it together was well worth it.
Yeah, all the cracks are filled with that rubberized material that if you've ever been a motorcycle rider or even a bicycle rider, your front wheel will hit and your front wheel will move a couple inches to the left or to the right. It's not very pleasant. So that's what's holding everything together right now, and it looks like a bunch of black stripes on pavement. So eventually we're going to have to do that. The MHS bus loop in the front of the school for 225, we've been talking about that also. The front of the school, when we built the 2000 edition, didn't have enough money to do that in the budget, and so we sprayed it and seal coated it and did whatever we could to kind of keep that going. But it's getting to the point where it's starting to crumble in places. And then you go to the Muse and Emmy entrance. The Muse entrance, we'd like to get that done. I would like when 2018, 2019, that the town would pave School Street, because there actually is a street that is between our parking lot and the church parking lot. And I think we've paved a quarter of it because people were falling down getting into the school, especially around voting time. I think I remember a couple of people bothering me on that. And we fixed that up, but that's really a town road, and we'd like to get that done with their cooperation. O'Gara is something that we, don't have right here in this CIP. Some people think that it needs to get done sooner than later. I just like to do the loop and the front of the school over again. And we're really not going to get down O'Gara that much further than just that point. So that'll be something else coming up in the future, wouldn't
I
you
think
say?
we're in process right now that I've had a conversation with Kyle Fox.
Yeah.
That we're gonna be re-looking at the numbers and
Yeah.
get their opinion about what they think that we need to do. Try to bring in their expertise about, in helping us out and maybe defining and giving us a better idea of the actual price. And again, as it was mentioned, it's a placeholder for now. The closer we get, the more we get fine-tuned on a number.
Yeah, because that worked out well with Reed's Ferry. That because they did the roadway, they sent us the bill for the roadway, and that worked out well because we got their price from Continental Paving, which they do roadways. So that worked out exceedingly well. Hanging out on its little lonely is the upper elementary school drainage area. See, it's kind of like Muse drainage, but it's really MES drainage because the Muse entrance used to be where MES is. So I need to kind of change that or modify it. But it's in that general area where the drainage is really poor, and we need to do something with that. And we've corrected a lot of the roof drain problems by repiping inside and getting them off the sanitary sewer system. But we still need to do some, while we do the parking lot, we'll do some exploratory work. Believe it or not, there's not a lot of drawings and prints, and we went down there once, and everybody was looking in amazement at this pipe and trying to figure out what it was. And I think somebody from the MVD, who had been there for an exceedingly long time, remembered exactly what it was. So we were fortunate to have that expertise. But when you deal with these schools that were built 40, 50 years ago, they didn't always put them on the plans, and they didn't always call DigSafe or whatever, if DigSafe even existed at that point in time. So you're bound to wind up with some surprises in that end. So that's to take care of the drainage, to make sure everything is nice and pitched evenly, and to couple that with the repaving of that entire lot, so it looks good, performs well, and striped nicely, and everything like that. So that's the CIP in a nutshell. If Tom would like to add anything else. The track. Oh, how could I forget the track?
Minor little item.
Yeah. The MHSS track and field. In speaking with Tom, let me know if I'm putting words in your mouth. The track is definitely a priority.
Yes.
Would you say?
I would say, I think it goes back to last year's talk when we were around the table here talking. It had to do, probably the life expectancy is maybe 2 years more this year and the following year. If we're not doing it this coming year, we probably should be thinking about doing it the following year. And that's not only because aesthetically you can see things going wrong, it's also substructure is also delaminating and stuff like that. So it can turn into a safety issue, and after having a outside contractor come down and take a look at it, that's their best determination also.
And we still have it as one project, because, I feel, it's my opinion that if you're gonna do the track in the field, if you're gonna do the field eventually, you're better off doing the field first and doing the track afterwards, because there's gonna be a lot of grade changes and drainage and whatnot. And yes, you can do the track without doing the artificial surface and come in some year in the future and do that, but it's just gonna make it more difficult, and in order to not damage your track, you're gonna have to, it's just not gonna be a case of laying down some sheets of plywood. You're basically gonna have to build a bridge.
I agree with Matt's point about building a bridge. When we were talking to people that construct the infields and stuff like that, they had same concern about crossing a track, meaning that can it be done? Absolutely. But you're basically, if you build the track first and you do the infield after, you have to basically construct a bridge, a small bridge to some extent, to protect the track, protect that investment you just made, especially in the short term. It could be really critical to make sure that you don't damage the track when you just put it in. So that's a lot of money on both behalves. So I'm with Matt, thinking that that project should possibly be rolled together.
Yeah. And the bridge is gonna be something that's not gonna be, it's gonna have to hold a lot of weight, considering the tonnage
amount
of the
of
trucks and the
materials and
amount of
stuff.
fill they're gonna be bringing in. So it's not gonna be something that we're gonna cobble together in Phil Carl's shop. So,
Superintendent.
One of the other things I wanted to offer was what the Planning and Building Committee talked a lot about, and I think Tom, Matt, and Andy would remember this, that this is a huge project. It really is a community affair. It goes well beyond the school system. And for the most part, most people wouldn't really have an idea about the need for the track, because we host events and so on, and the need to make sure we maintain a field that can be used more like 24/7 than just in a given school day. So I think more was talked about the marketing of it than the actual construction of it, so that when the board decides what it wants to do for 15-16, if it decides the consolidation of special services in the SAU office is the most important, then in this outlying year or preparatory to that would be the Planning and Building Committee aligning itself with other groups in town, be it the MYA or whomever, to try and get them to understand the critical need for this. Because if we hold on the weight, it just puts us that much off. And so it's this notion of information. I mean, that was really, a lot of time was spent on that.
Mr. Schneider.
Yeah, just to add to that, that's exactly what I was gonna say, because because this is not just a high school thing, this is a community thing that we wanna do, because the proposal is to do a turf field rather than just a grass, and do the track right. It was shared during the discussion that other towns have brought together committees that are much broader than just school, private people, different athletic organizations in town, to look to see what opportunities there are for revenue and things like that could help. I mean, we're not talking about sponsorship necessarily, but other possibilities to see what can be done to either offset the cost or the stage it, or sort of, guarantee some sort of an income flow for the user, something like that. So I think that before we see this seriously discussed, I think the marketing angle and how we can get this looked at more holistically rather than just in the district will certainly be brought forward.
Great, thank you. So we've covered a lot before we've stopped for questions. Are there any questions or comments from the board based on what we've heard? Vice Chair Barnes.
I have quite a few. It's all over the place. Why don't we start at the top? Reed's Ferry. We're going with roofing to start.
Okay.
You said you've begun roofing and it hasn't really been done. And I kind of remember Reed's and Thornton's having about the same age to them.
There was definitely a different in age, and I met 2 or 3 years ago, we did a roof project at Reed's Ferry,
I remember, yeah.
and we did quite a few of their roofs there. We did almost, I'm gonna say, at least not quite 3/4 of their roofs. So there's a considerable amount left, but we'll be completing Reed's Ferry, the rest of the roofs that we started in the 2016 to 2017 budget year, and we'll begin Thornton's Ferry. And it goes back to us looking at the roofs, taking a walk around, how they're holding up, how they're lasting, and that's kind of how they fit on the scale about, it's based not only on age, it's also based on need. And there was a greater need, in my opinion, to do the Reed's Ferry, and before we even started at Thornton's Ferry, so
I
that's
remember
why
you
it
saying it was
happened.
saturated in spots.
we
So,
had-
I mean, it was necessary, but I guess the question is, how is Thornton's held up if it's nearly the same age? The buildings, not the roofs, clearly.
I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, that's all right. Not holding you to the engineering
It's
standard.
just that, when you see roofs, sometimes I look at roofs even now, and I look at it and I say, geez, I think that's got 5 years out, or 10 years out. And then you look at it 6 months later, and this is exactly what you do. You look at it and you say, no, that's not 5 years out, that's probably 3 years out. So there's some kind of tinkering in that.
Go ahead.
Would this be a true statement, having been a former principal at Reed's Ferry, that there have been more kids or more persons that have gone up on the roof of Reed's Ferry? And every time, no, I'm serious,
Not mine.
we had a lot of issues, that was back in the day, but every time you have anybody up on the roof, that's a damaging factor. And just look at the difference in the settings. Reed's Ferry is so exposed, it just sits out, it doesn't have any shade, anything. Thornton's Ferry is just in a much different kind of arena. But I experienced the roofing issue when I was there, and the more people you have going up on the roof, the more toll it takes over time.
I would agree. Traffic is a big factor when you're looking at a roof and the length time that it will last.
Yeah.
So, really no surprise. I mean, 17, and that's really where my concern was, because I think, as we talked in Reed's was 5 years ago, pretty bad off. I mean, like,
It was
we
very
couldn't,
bad.
you were running to us for help. So I was just making sure we weren't going to see that kind of situation we don't have the potential for that situation at Thornton's necessarily. So that was the genesis of that. And then MMS, you're doing the whole building. So when you consider a roof,
That is not the whole building.
oh, talk to me. How much of the building is that?
That's probably about, I'm going to say it's a little over 3/4 of it.
I guess 3/4 of it.
Is it everything but the music room, CAF?
The CAF music room,
Yeah,
most of it.
most of it.
I don't know, you want it leaking on the brass, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And then down to asbestos, you said those 2 years are fine, and you don't see us having to up anything because of permeation or
No,
crackling of asbestos.
I think we've done pretty well about staying on track. We've had years in the past where we've had a great need, or a possible concern could have happened if we didn't act. We're not in that situation this time. I'm very comfortable in taking a pause here with the abatement of 1 year and then continuing on. So we're progressing the way I think we should in giving all the needs that the school district does have. It's more than just the abatement, and it's all our parts working together.
Yeah, I don't think Chris and I have had a year on the board together that there hasn't been asbestos abatement.
Yeah.
It's like an annual tradition. That and homecoming, right?
And Bruce.
And roofs. And paving, the question I had for that was, is there any redesign or traffic study? I know we did that at Reed's when we redid some of the paving projects, that we'd be doing some repurposing of direction and design. Are there any of those projects associated with this?
That is not even,
That's
haven't
not-
really
that's
considered.
not on
We're
the
just going
radar.
over what's there.
What's there and
And
just to
everything seems to be
recreate.
working at this point, I
Yeah, we
believe.
we feel that it's working fine the way it is. Obviously, come the afternoon, it can be challenging at times because of the high school students and their vehicles. I was one once, and I understand. So it's just something that access is limited. It's a high school, and when you couple that with the surrounding buildings, and you couple that with the Mastrocola complex, you basically have, over the years, built an urban sort of school setting in a suburban community. So you've limited your ways of, you've limited your accesses because you just don't have the land. You don't have the means to create what you need to create. It will probably be something we'll bring Steve in on, I'm sure, and talk to him, Steve Keach, I mean, and talk to him about that to see if he has any ideas. He's going to be with us shortly, but he's always a good resource to talk to, and he may come up with something innovative. But right now, this is just to recreate what's there and make it for better.
And that's really where I'm at, and kind of where I was hoping you would go with that, is if we are going to spend $750,000 on paving, let's make sure that we're creating an ideal landscape versus doing the same thing, replicating the same thing, and maybe not getting the most out of our investment.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it depends, is there a central office?
That does depend on a lot of things.
You've got to look at that piece too.
Absolutely do.
If there's a central office sitting there, well, that affects a lot. Traffic patterns and where you want to go, and you may want to get a little more involved in design. But yeah, we would definitely, before we do anything like that, we'd have Steve take a look at it and see, what do you think? We're just going to recreate what we have. Is that good enough, or do you have any other thoughts?
Okay.
And it doesn't cost a lot, and it doesn't take a long time to take a look at it, and for him to give you an evaluation of what you got, and some options if you needed some options. It all depends on a lot of factors. But right now, we're just looking at recreating what is. And the superintendent did bring up a valid point as far as the roof goes. You have a piece of material baking out in the sun for X amount of hours a day versus one that's shaded for most of the day. The UV rays on a rubber roof is definitely going to affect the lifespan of it. It all depends what weather conditions it's under. So that's a valid point.
Shannon?
And my final was on track and field. You talked about the track condition, and if we don't do it this coming year, we should do it next year.
Yes.
So are you saying that our track really isn't usable for meets at this point?
No, it's certainly,
Or
we've done
it's
repairs,
doing
it's
well?
up and running, there's not an issue this year. I'm just saying it's out there.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Or even next year. I mean, if you look at where this falls, would be something we would talk about a year from now. So we'd have to go through all this year and all next year with the current track. So the belief was 2 years, and then feeling really comfortable.
Okay.
If something happens, could we make it a third? I mean, we'd have to evaluate. But I think if we only had a year left, then this would be moved back into this year's CIP, and it's not. So.
Yeah.
And just a piece of advice you may want to consider is, you're talking about community for this track and field anyway. Matt Kasparius of our new Parks and Rec director has a lot of ideas, comes from outside of this area, so has experience in that area where he may be able to give you some insights and some ideas to fold in the greater community for this project. So just a thought to have him at maybe a planning and building meeting.
Yeah, I think the intent was really broaden it out and get all the, from the town and all the other things. Absolutely.
It's a good brainstorming source for you.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I think the point that Tom's trying to get across is, basically, we make safe, we make sure it's functionable, we inspect it during the year, but, you get to a point where there's only so many times you can darn the sock before it's short enough that you can't put it on your foot anymore, if anybody darns socks anymore. It's a lost art. So there's only so many repairs you can do until you get a patchwork quilt, so.
We have a lab now, so we don't have socks.
You have a lamb?
He
I
takes
thought
it.
you were cussing. Darn sock.
Darn the socks.
Any other questions from the board? So in terms of process, as I mentioned before, this was intake, and there was a lot of discussion and conversation. At our next meeting, we'll actually work the capital improvement plan. If there's any modifications folks want to make, I'll entertain those motions. We'll move it forward. I was heartened to hear what you said about feeling like we're on track, and that things aren't going to shift significantly. I think, as it relates to the roof, we know in recent years, just this last year, we had passionate discussions about taking some of these roofing projects, breaking them up, keeping them in whole, and then revisiting them, and that was all good, because in doing so, regardless of where we wound up, we were still progressing on this plan. I think the reason we found ourselves in a state where roofs were beginning to fail was that a commitment to continuing to address these issues hadn't been in place, and we were dealing with some long-standing repercussions of not addressing those things. And so I think as a board, it's a good thing that we have those discussions, but I think it's also good, and I think this board, prior boards, and I would anticipate future boards should remain committed to the capital improvement plan and keeping it moving forward. So we'll look for that additional documentation, and we'll work this at our next meeting. Which takes us now to item number 8 on tonight's agenda, request to bargain a successor agreement for the Merrimack Educational Support Staff Association, otherwise known as MESA. In your packet, thank you, Mr. Tuso. In your packet, you will see a letter that I received from Renee Bolio, the negotiations chair for MESA, requesting to negotiate a successor agreement. And they have asked for us to contact them with the date for the first negotiating session. Our negotiations team is led by Vice Chair Barnes. The second is Mr. Schneider. And so I would ask that the team reach out to Mr. Bolio and set up at least the first meeting. At our next meeting, I will arrange an agenda item, non-public, for the board and administration to offer guidance to the negotiating team in terms of what this group would like to see out of the contract. Are there any comments or questions? Mr. Schneider.
This is for Mr. Chevenel over in the corner. Were you able to get the agreement online yet, or is it still in hard copy only? Do you know the status of the current one?
I have not got it online yet, no.
Okay.
But I will.
Because we need to make sure before we have our discussion that we
Yeah.
have a copy, but also
Yeah.
it'd be good to get it online as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah,
so
it
it's
should be
consistent.
online.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. That takes us to item number 9, update on the August Academy, Dr. Mark McLaughlin.
Thank you. Well, this is great timing because August Academy just concluded a few days ago, so it's fresh in the mind. I'd like to start just generally by just saying briefly how we view professional development in Merrimack. It's really an investment in our teachers that directly impacts our students. I think it's fair to say that every dollar spent on supporting our teachers redounds to our students really in a direct way. And this year, I think, is no exception. Every year we try to either extend our teachers' learning, we affirm practices, we challenge practices, we expose teachers to new thinking, new ideas, and frankly, that's as it should be. I don't think that it bodes well for educators to always rely on what they used to do as being evidence of what should be done now. And so I think we've been very successful in Merrimack to extend, affirm, challenge, and expose our teachers, and this year was no exception. I think it's just important to contextualize what we try to achieve with professional development. It's also true to say that each level, elementary, middle, and high school, has its own unique needs and therefore sets of professional development plans that relate to those needs. And so I'm going to start describing the high school, and I'll say in that particular case, because it's a little different from the elementary, all staff are involved. All of the work that's been done on competencies and competency-based assessments has been done by all staff, and so this is a case where all staff were involved. We were fortunate this year to have an individual by the name of David Pook who provided a keynote or a keynote workshop to our high school and middle school staff. His focus was on college and career-ready standards and setting the stage for those in practice. And he was particularly focused on enhancing cross-disciplinary work, reading and writing across the curriculum. And that's very, very in keeping with expectations for college and career-ready standards now, is linking the content areas. So over 3 days at the high school with activities suggested by David Pook and, of course, the administration and implemented by department heads, the high school worked on the following: examining text complexity, determining the level of rigor for each standard relative to competency assessments, and technology integration in the classroom. I'll just say something briefly. All of these could stand a lot of conversation, but I'll just say something about text complexity. One of the highlights of the college and career-ready standards is the prioritization of being able to, whether it's an English textbook or a science, an English novel or a science textbook, a social studies textbook, to be able to engage in close reading and to examine the words on the page rather than focus on exclusively a student's response to something like, I think it means this, or I think it means that. There's evidence in the text to support a conclusion. Not every conclusion is equal. And so when we talk about text complexity, we talk about increasing levels of difficulty in text that require a student to read carefully and to draw a conclusion based on evidence in the text. That's a high-ordered level of thinking that's different from saying, as a former English teacher, to say, you just read chapter 3. What do you think it means? Well, what I think it means and what you think it means, while valid, is not always supported by evidence in the text. And so this is really a very stringent standard requirement that asks students to be able to say, well, I will point to you on line 15 in page 30 why I draw this conclusion. That's a skill that the standards call for that the high school has been working quite a bit on. The other thing that they've been doing when we talk about the level of rigor for each standard relating to the assessments, one of the things that we've worked hard on having our educators understand, and they do, and it's worth mentioning to the public, is that much in the same way that a person would go to a doctor not feeling well and the doctor saying, we hope a doctor wouldn't say, well, take some antibiotics and I hope it works. Likewise, when a student presents with certain challenges, the only way we determine what those challenges are is by assessing them. So sometimes we hear people say, well, we assess too much. When a person isn't well, the doctor orders tests, assessments, blood work, what have you. Likewise, in a school setting. So we're talking a lot about diagnostic assessments. That's what we're doing now. That's what the college and career ready standards really require of us, is to understand what's the nature of the student's knowledge, what's the nature of what the student doesn't know, and try to determine why it is they don't know those things that are required, and then to assess what those might be, and then to put practices in place that support that. So all of that was wedded into what the high school has been and is continuing to work on. So over 3 days, led by Mr. Pook, that's what the high school was engaged in. It's also important to say, and I think in the past I've said this to you, that we are increasingly relying on our own staff to provide these kinds of supports. So our department heads were critical players in implementing that professional development. At the middle school, we were lucky, again, to have Mr. Pook to provide a sort of a workshop keynote as well. In this case, coordinated with an individual named Lynn Stewart from Learning Innovations West Ed. Those two collaborated on a 3-day professional development whose focus was assessment, specifically, again, analyzing text complexity, developing text-dependent questions, and close reading strategies, again, across the curriculum. So I think you're seeing some symmetry between the middle school and the high school. Although the middle school work is called SCALES, and the high school work doesn't have a name per se, it's competencies and all that relates to competencies. There's some real symmetry between what the two are doing. So on day 1, Mr. Pook again set the stage for the work, and on days 2 and 3, the focus was on integrating and building on these ideas and strategies, text complexity, and so on and so forth, as teachers connect them to curriculum units, lesson planning, and instruction. All of this is called depth of knowledge, and it provides a broad lens to analyze how curriculum, instruction, and assessment tasks align to understand the different cognitive demands of a standard. Sometimes you just need to know basics like, who was the first president, and other times you need to know much deeper things like why did the first president lead the charge over the Delaware in the way that he did, or something. So there are different levels of standards that are required, and so depth of knowledge is a practice that the middle school has been engaged in to determine when it's appropriate to go thin and when it's appropriate to go deep based on the requirement of the standard. So over 3 days, starting off with Mr. Pook and then with Ms. Stewart, the middle school, along with its SCALES leaders, of course, and administration, again, leveraging the work of the people right in the building, engaged in pretty extensive and important work. The elementary was this year, a slightly more complicated endeavor to put together, because there we thought it was important to, in some cases, to break off certain groups. So I'll describe that in a minute. Because it was a little bit more complicated, I provided more or less a schedule for you at your table this evening about what the individual groups experienced. So we'll just start with classroom teachers, pre-K through 6, special education staff, related service providers. I said CTEs, it's actually ETIs, Ed Tech integrators, librarians, gifted and talented ESOL, Title I teachers, and world language teachers. All of that group experienced the following. We were able to get a nationally recognized keynote speaker named Sarah Buxton, who spoke to the staff about the work they've been doing on the second year of our district elementary writing program. And so she kicked us off with a very powerful conversation about the work that we've been doing. She was guided by our team to know where we are in that initiative. And so she kicked us off with both understanding where we are and where we need to go this year in our elementary writing program. In the afternoon, there was a fairly complicated and complex organization worked out about trying to link reading and writing standards together. And so the latter half of day 2 and all of day 1 and all of day 2 were focused on the integration of reading and writing. So now we have, whereas before we were taking them as two separate things and doing them quite well, this is a year where we're really focusing on a neat integration of both for true ELA delivery. And so what I provided you on the second page is just a description of how that worked, particularly on Wednesday. We're so lucky to have our language arts coordinators who have just done tremendous, I can't hardly even find the words to tell you how hard these people work over the summer to, along with our administrators and teacher teams, to develop a scope and sequence and an instructional framework for literacy that now integrates these two areas in a way that is profoundly powerful, and so that is referenced here. So the morning schedule, I think you can see, I don't need to describe it, but it just speaks to some great planning on the behalf of our team. Teachers maneuvered in grade level groups among 5 sessions, each of which had a specific focus for reading or writing or spelling. And so so that for that group was day 1 and 2. And on day 3, we worked very hard to begin to pivot our conversation towards math instruction. And so on the first part of day 3, we were lucky enough to have an individual named Greg Tang, and I would encourage you to look him up. He's a nationally recognized math expert, and he brought an understanding of the college and career ready standards in math, coupled with a practical and exciting way to think about math instruction so that teachers, some of whom don't necessarily think of themselves as math people, walked away with a renewed sense, and almost an inspired sense of, I can do that too. I can be a great math teacher. I can share that with students. I can learn great strategies. I can make things more interesting maybe than I made them, more understandable than I made them. And in the afternoon, after Mr. Tang had kicked us off, teachers were exposed to the work of our district math team as it relates to integrating our tools and resources that we have into the college and career standards for math. And that included the release of a new instructional framework for math and the beginning of a series of initiatives we're going to put into place over the period of the next few years to continue to refine our delivery. So this was the kickoff for all of that, and a powerful 3 days for them. In addition, the guidance counselors, so that would be your next page, behavior specialists, and emotionally the PASS teachers, we really did want to bring them together, K to 12, because we have heard so much in the news about the importance of building a healthy, strong environment. And one of the things that was a takeaway for that presentation was the idea that a healthy school climate isn't part of the things that a teacher, or part of the plate of a teacher, it is the plate. And we're very lucky to have a man named Richard Cardillo, who is the education director for the National School Climate Center based in New York, who came and worked with those folks, K to 12, over 3 days. Session 1 was called School Climate 101 and the Fundamentals of Classroom Climate Improvement. Session 2 on day 2 was classroom level and school level interventions to foster school climate improvement, student engagement, student leadership, and service learning. And day 3 was building and sustaining a positive school climate. we've been focused on that group for a few years now on mental health and wellness, suicide prevention, bullying. All of that is related to school climate. And so we feel like we were lucky to have the source, the National School Climate Center, help us. In addition, we broke midway on the third day because a number of the counselors over time had expressed a need to understand legal issues concerning parenting agreements, custodial issues, and revisions to the restraint and seclusion law. So we were able to have attorneys come and speak to our team about that. So they were able to both get what they felt that they needed and also what's going to help us out, I think, in the long run to manage those very complicated situations. Music educators K to 6 were spent 3 days with a faculty member from the UMass Lowell music department, and his focus was on technology integration in the music classroom. And it's one of those things where it's the description of it is going to be far less than the experience of it, but I'll just give you an example. On day one, when I went to check on them, I walked into the room, and he had a piece of tinfoil, probably about 8 or 9 feet long, like a red carpet laid out, but just tinfoil. And the principal of Thorntons Ferry was with me, Bridie Bellamere, and when we walked in, Mike said to Bridie, "Take off your shoes and stand on the tin foil." And the music teachers were each holding a wire that was connected to something called a makey-makey, which is something I encourage you to look up. It's a way to take any kind of medium that you have and be able to turn it into like a computer keyboard. And so the teachers were holding a wire, and their hands were up, and Bridie Bellamere was standing on the tin foil and was encouraged to touch everybody's hand. And everybody's hand, based on the wire, was a note on the scale. And so tapping everybody's hand, fast, slow, holding on, makes a deeper sound. You could literally have an interactive experience with technology that could be used for OT and PT. It could be used for students who need to young students who sometimes just can't sit in the seat much longer, but they can do something meaningful and useful. That was just one of the things that Mike was able to help our teachers recognize the use of technology. And the best part of it is that the makey-makeys are only $25, and everything else that he showed was all web-based. So they learn now a vast array of things that they can do in the classroom for virtually no cost. So that was our music educators. Art educators had an interesting experience in that we were finding it very difficult to be able to land on live presenters. And so though that has been the tradition, the thought was, well, if we can't get actually live people to present to us, we should probably try to think outside that proverbial box a little bit. So there's a group called the Center for Interactive Learning and Collaboration, CILC, and what they do is distance learning. And so we were able to contract with them, and our art teachers had an experience on day one integrating art and literacy in a presentation called Looking to Write, Writing to Look, that was hosted by Linda O'Leary, who is the co-curator of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And so for that day, the teachers were gathered in the classroom at Southern New Hampshire University, and with help from Nancy Rose and the tech people from CILC and the tech people from SNU, we were able to get a camera set up and a big computer screen, and the teachers had an interactive presentation, only it was from someone about 400 miles away. And so the idea there is that we can, if we continue to leverage that resource, we have an awful lot of opportunity to take the brain power of a lot of really good, smart people from all across the country, and for very little expense, bring them to us. On day 2 and day 3, we were able to connect with the Ammon Center for the Arts in Fort Worth, Texas, and they provided 3 different workshops. The Evolution of Georgia O'Keeffe, the analyze, describe, and interpret parts 1 and 2, and then the fine art of reading studio video conference demonstration, all of which used live collections from either the Philly Museum of Art or the Emmons Center, live collections to be able to help students understand how they can look at art to promote critical thinking, writing prompts, and so the staff walked around the collections with a camera on a 3-prong tripod kind of thing that just walked, and they just walked around like this, and they would just aim the camera at a piece of art and then teach the teachers how to frame, look at the colors, look at the contrast, look at the foreground and background and all the things that our teachers do to then relate that to literacy conversations and literacy prompts. So we were really grateful to have that opportunity for our teachers, art teachers. Nurses, K to 12, were exposed to a FEMA online training at Southern New Hampshire University, and then later part of a Board of Nursing discussion in Concord that was all about best current practices. We were able to have an array of people to support those professionals, from National Eye Associates to help our teachers, our nurses understand vision screening practices, and then such that we could develop universal procedures for that. We had a man named Ryan Holder from Adventure Lore who worked with our teachers on identifying, our nurses, I'm sorry, on identifying early onset of mental challenges, mental health challenges for students. We were able to connect with UNH faculty Mary Jane Sullivan on hearing and screenings, so the nurses were able to have content-specific support that will lead to the establishment of tight district protocols for a variety of things that are part of what they do. And finally, for the professional staff, our phys ed teachers on day 1 had an opportunity to have a training on nutrition and exercise in the classroom from an individual named Pam Stuppy from Phillips Exeter Academy. On days 2 and 3, faculty members from the phys ed department at UNH, Dr. Stephen Wright and Dr. Michelle Grenier, assessment, phys ed, and the college and career ready standards of Common Core, introduction to the tactical approach to teaching games, and then including students with physical disabilities and autism in the PE classroom. Again, related to the content, and all of which led to practical things that teachers can take back into their classrooms. And then finally, our paraeducators had the opportunity to have a variety of trainings, everything from using iPads to meet the needs of disabled students, Excel for educators, Lumia training. Lumia is a program that special educators use to input the needs of students such that we can be reimbursed for the services that we provide for them. Knowing the early warning signs of suicide and self-harm, so on and so forth. So the paraeducators over 2 days, because they work 2 days, our professional staff work 3 on those days, again, were treated to a variety of things, all of which, by the way, were part of what they asked for as part of our survey to that group to find out what it is that they need. And so we were able to satisfy that pretty well. So all in all, it was 3, I think, very powerful days, and I just feel like it's important to say that you really should feel confident that you have a leadership team and professional staff who just excel at working together as a team to provide really great experiences for teachers. On the first day, the superintendent last year did this, and I thought it was a great tradition, so I did it again. And she asked, and I did again this year, for all the people in the room on day 1 who were involved in curriculum work of some nature, whether it's math, writing, the integration of reading and writing, to stand. And it's a critical mass of teachers, all of whom worked hard over the summer on behalf of their colleagues to develop and present much of the work that I've just summarized for you. And so, leveraging that resource is I think, a powerful way to extend our professional development. We do rely on outside folks, obviously, and then we do a lot with our people internally, and there's great power in that. So I would just say, I'd like to publicly say how grateful I am to all of them for all of that. It's no small thing, and they just really do outstanding work. I'm happy to take whatever questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. McLaughlin? Ms. Guagliumi.
Yeah, first, a couple comments. It's clear that there's a lot of work that goes into putting these type of agendas and schedules, and it's really impressive, the amount of professional development that was as a result, it appears as a result of what went on just recently. But a couple of questions. The first one is, do you do any type of, I know like when I participate in training at work, do you do any type of surveys or assessment on how it can possibly be optimized, or what were the key points? Is there evaluation that you do post the sessions?
So the first part is about the surveys, and so yes, the Professional Development Committee each year toward the end of the year asks staff to talk about what would be helpful to them, and that information is combined with sort of the leadership's aspirations for leading our team, again, extending and challenging and so on. And so what I just described to you is a combination of both direct results of surveys that we've administered and had feedback from, particularly the paraeducators. I mean, it's almost a direct correlation between what they asked for and what we were able to deliver. And again, like the leadership team's vision too. So we marry those two. And as far as post workshop evaluation, yes, each group that I described it completed an evaluation, and over the next few weeks, with the leadership team, we'll be reviewing those to see both where we did well, where we could improve, and then all of that will be fodder for next year's planning.
Yeah, no, that's great. It was really exciting to hear about the whole program. Secondly, you had mentioned, I believe it was in the context of the elementary training, about the release of new instructional framework for math.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered if you could tell me a little bit more about that.
Mm-hmm. So we have our primary resource is Everyday Math, and we've long acknowledged that the part of Everyday Math that isn't strongest is the automaticity component. We've also known that the strongest part of it is number sense and operations, and it's making sense of math. And one of the things that Mr. Tang talked a lot about is the difference between automaticity and fluency, and sometimes those are used interchangeably. So the example that he provided was, if a person memorizes 100 words in Spanish, that doesn't make them a fluent Spanish speaker. Likewise, if you memorize your times tables, that doesn't make you a fluent math knower. And so the important thing is to, of course, if you're going to speak Spanish, sometimes you need to consult a dictionary, but you can't be looking at every other word. Some things have to flow. And likewise, when you're doing math, sometimes you have to use a calculator and look things up, but sometimes it has to flow. So there certainly has to be things that you remember. So what we've done is to incorporate the College and Career Ready standards as the guiding principle for how we use the tool, which is Everyday Math, but additional tools too. So that's a deviation from the past, where our tool was exclusively Everyday Math. We have now, in fact, we've begun that process several years ago when we began to recognize that we needed to do something alternative for fact fluency, or fact automaticity, I should say. And so we've done that. And so the framework really provides a guide for teachers to negotiate the spiral differently than they have in the past, so that we attend to the standards and use the tool, which is primarily everyday math. It's a tool, it's not the curriculum, to use the tool in the way we want to, as opposed to having the tool more or less drive what we do. That's a major shift, and we think we're ready for that shift now, and the framework for instruction, which I described, was that document that begins to help teachers to understand how actually to do that. So where to, what units to use here and here for this standard. Maybe not exactly here yet, because maybe we need to do a little bit more here. So anyway, it lays it out that way. And that was a team of teachers and administrators who worked on that. And that job is an ongoing job. I mean, like everything else about curriculum and instruction, if we're going to stay current, we have to keep investigating and researching. So in any event, that's the beginning stage of what we're attempting to do, and this was the kickoff for all that.
So would it be a true statement if I said that we're incorporating more methodologies and more tools to reach the given standards for our grade levels to meet the actual college, the pre-college or the college placement or the college?
Yes.
The higher level standards?
Yes.
Okay.
It would be.
Any other questions? I would just echo what Board Member Guagliumi said, which is that to put on facilitated sessions of this magnitude for every hour of session time that goes on, having done this professionally, I know it takes probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours of preparation time to make that a productive use of time for the people who are there. And so what this represents for us as a district is a major investment in our staff, right, for the objective of their professional development as it's going to benefit the children. So along those lines, I am too encouraged to hear that there's assessments, continual refinement. We're looking to improve those things. I heard firsthand, because of my relationship with the teacher, about the inspirational nature of Mr. Tang's speech. Highly energizing, very motivational, and from what it was described, the room was charged with energy. And so I'm thankful for the detailed report, but more importantly, for all the work that went into making this a successful academy. So thank you. And that takes us to item number 10, update on summer maintenance projects. Business Administrator Matt Chevenel.
Thank you very much again. The three main projects we had during the summertime were the roof at the high school, which has been completed within budget. The abatement over at the upper elementary school, the asbestos abatement, has been completed also. That one is one that was a little bit of a nail biter at the end to get done, but it did get done. And last but not least, the natural gas conversion. All the pipes are laid in. We have a boiler in each school running on natural gas to provide domestic hot water. By the end of September, we'll have all the boilers up and running to provide heat. We don't really need heat in the buildings right now, so we have a couple more weeks to get that project done. We did also make a connection with Our Lady of Mercy Church, who, seeing that our gas line for the Master Cola complex was going right by, who wanted us to facilitate a meeting with Liberty Utilities. And I can't say enough for Ryan Legassi, who I worked with on this project from Liberty Utilities, the professionalism of his crew and the way they conducted themselves and the speed in which they got the connections to where they were going was quite impressive. And so we facilitated a meeting with the church in a show of good faith, no pun intended. And that went very well, and I believe they're going to convert over too, because it's going to be a great savings for them. So, and it's important for us to maintain good relationships with the church, because we do utilize their parking lot and we help maintain it in the wintertime and, make sure it's in good care and keeping. So anything we can do for them is only to our benefit. So it was a great project, and everything is working really well. We'll be buying gas off of Liberty for the next couple of months, and then I'll probably shop it around on the market to see if I can get a cheaper rate. So I'm in the process of doing that right now. I'm expecting maybe a phone call from my source in late September. We'll have some numbers for me. Maybe we can lock in like we did with the electric for a few years. So we'll see. So that's it. Summer projects. Thank you.
I love a good pun. Are there any questions? Mr. Schneider?
Yeah, really quick one. When Tom showed us the roof map, there were these little random pieces of roof that looked like they were also done this year besides the main ones we knew about.
Yeah.
Was that sort of always in the plan, or was it something we were able to get them to do really
That was
cheap?
something we were able to get them to do when they were up there, and we had a little leeway
Right,
in the
it's like
budget.
stuff like the covering over the walkway, the
Yep.
bridge, and the
Yep.
entrance to by the cafeteria and the back, and, I mean, little things that probably optimized because they were there and they had all the equipment that we.
They were there. To bring them back, there's always something called general conditions, and it's going to cost the same amount of money whether or not you're doing a big roof or a small roof. And it's set up. It's a phone line. It's a trailer. It's porta potties. It's whatever it is. And so while they were up there, we had money left in the roof budget. We asked if they could take care of these little areas for us, and we figured while they were up there, let's get those little small kind of nuisance type areas out of the way and get them done. They need to get done anyway, so the timing was right. So we struck.
The second question is, early on in the process, there was some questions that I saw in a couple of public forums where they were questioning where the gas lines were going. People that were residents in the area here that heard about us bringing gas wanted to know where the gas lines were. Do you know if Liberty did any outreach to people that were in this general area to investigate whether they wanted to hook up to the gas and maybe do
They
that kind of
received
stuff?
several calls from local residents, and they're going to go forward and do a study. See what their model is. They have a 6-year revenue stream, so they'll put the connection down the road, bring it to the edge of the pavement, and if the payback from what you use is going to pay for their installation cost over a 6-year period, they will do it. It used to be 4 years, but they've elongated it to 6. So that's the determining factor right now. But they have been in contact with residents, but it's all up to the way the corporate structure and rules are right now. Because I know there's a lot of people who ask me personally, hey, by the way, do you think you could, but it's up to them, and it could be profitable, it could not be, so who knows.
All set? Any other questions? Ms. Gualyumi?
Kind of related, kind of not. I just wondered if you could remind us of the status of the high school bleachers. I can't remember when those were.
Oh, we have already ordered them. We're looking at late November
Okay, thanks.
to have them in. The welding has been done, obviously, and we re-inspected everything, and they can be utilized. But once November comes, they're gone and new ones will be put up, hopefully before the big rush of
Right.
basketball season comes.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions? It's unfortunate that Mr. Tuso has left because he obviously owns these projects as much as you do, and yeah, more. Thank you. And in doing so, each summer they never seem to end. Right? Every summer we've got some major projects with major considerations. And you guys just pull them off. Multiple projects this summer, multiple projects last summer. I thank you. The board, I think, thanks you for all the work in making these things come off seamlessly. They just get done, but I know behind the scenes they don't just get done. So thank you for making it seem transparent.
Yeah, I will convey that to Mr. Tuso.
Please do.
As I have in the past
Yeah.
anyway, so yes,
Thank
I
you.
will.
And that takes us to item number 11, other correspondence. Is there any correspondence to come before the board? Okay. Seeing none, or comments, are there any comments from the board? Mr. Schneider.
Yeah, I wanted to really briefly, there's been some buzz out in the community about the assistant principal that we hired into Massacola Elementary. The process that we go through is when we go through the budget process in the spring, we budget for all the staff positions, whether administrative, whether they're teaching, and it's budgeted for that year. So when we have a resignation like we do with a teacher, it's our duty and it's our responsibility to fill that budgeted position because the dynamics haven't changed. If you go back to the beginning when JMUS was created, there was, it's treated as two separate buildings, Massacola Elementary, JMUS. There was a proposal by a school board about 8 years ago, I believe, during some very major staffing cuts to eliminate the assistant principal at the elementary. Two things happened that year. One, there was a proposal made at the deliberative session by a private ballot, if I remember correctly, to add some money back into the budget, which was done, and it was enough to do several teachers, several positions. There was also a petition warrant article an advisory one, to bring back the assistant principal at Massacola. That passed, as well as the budget. The school board at the time, the only money they used was to bring the assistant principal back. They didn't bring the other positions, just that. So at that point in time, it stayed as two administrators for both buildings. During recent budgetary times, there's been proposals made by a board member to consolidate down because of staffing, because of population levels, the fact that both buildings are next to each other. Discussions occurred each year where it was the opinion of administration as well as the majority of the board that even though they're co-located, they're really two separate entities. There's the kindergarten through fourth grade, and then there's 5th and 6th. They need their full administration to do what they need to do. And as a matter of fact, the elementary school has increased in its scope with preschool and things over time. So, we've had the conversation. It's all been part of the budget process about, keeping the full staff. One of the things I'd like to really bring forward is that we've heard a lot about the Performance Evaluation Committee for educators and what is required to really make that happen. Excuse me. So there's adequate evaluations that can occur, and the responsibility of administration within each of the buildings to make that happen is significant. And if anything, that effort, which is certainly the community has wanted us to have a state-of-the-art evaluation of performance for a myriad of reasons. I think it really brings to light the need to really have that full staff at Masco Elementary as well as all of our schools. So, I just wanted to reflect to folks that it was a budgeted position. We did bring it back in because it was a budgeted one, and to re-stress the importance of the staff at all of our schools due to the evaluation committee that will become real very soon. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Well said. Any other comments from the board? I have one, and it relates to the joint meeting. At our last session, I had asked for some proposed dates, or I proposed some dates for a joint meeting. At their most recent meeting, the town council, having watched their session, had a preference for September 29th. I've not yet formally heard from Chair Harrington about this, but having watched their meeting and coming into our session, I would just ask you to hold that date now that they've discussed it and seemingly chosen it as the preferred date. And I expect shortly that she and I will actually connect and confirm. That is a Monday. That takes us to item number 12, new business. Is there any new business to come before the board? Seeing none, I'll move to item number 13, committee reports. Vice Chair Barnes.
I have two. On the 19th of August, the Greater Woods Subcommittee met, and I swear it was all it all came back to middle school. So there was so much that we were discussing about Eagle Scout projects that create new landing spots for lookouts, to trail work, to even we talked about how students are using the property to get to schools. What it means for not only the students' safety but the impact on wetlands. I mean, everything just came back to the middle school. So based on that, I took some notes on all the different areas that really involved the school district and emailed Matt and Debbie Wolfline and copied Marge, inviting them to either a September or October meeting. Sounds like the district is best suited to meet in October to go over the laundry list of things where collaboration is beneficial for our groups. I know that in the summer we talked about Camp Mytina and how it will no longer be a factor in our middle school education, but the Greater Woods property is going to take a critical role in replacing some of that content. I think that there's some resources there, especially since they're constantly out there looking at the terrain, the nature, and everything else, that they can bring more expertise just from hands-on. And of course the new trails, the new everything else that they can integrate in, that they can introduce the district to that they may not be aware of. Other areas are even things like police concerns. I know that there are some dirt bike trails where the dirt bikes or quads are going out onto our soccer fields. So, and that's been noticed. So collaborating with the middle school, knowing we have a school resource officer, to not only enforce those limitations for use, but to use our school resource officer to maybe even go back to the police department and reinforce with his colleagues the appropriate areas to be and not to be on with ATVs, because there's 50 acres where it is absolutely unequivocally prohibited. So that was, there's a lot of things going on, but those things specifically are very, time sensitive, especially with our students back. And they are doing some trail work tentatively the weekend of the 20th of this month. So they're going to be looking for access, but the best way is to go through the middle school, but it's not school district property initiatives, but it will help our district with some of the trail work they're doing. And I believe the RFP is out for the joint project that we are doing with the Conservation Commission on Greater Woods that will assist with some trail work that will help with our cross-country team and students that are hiking out there. On the 20th, Parks and Rec met, so it was a fun week. The bylaws are still under review based on some feedback from the town council. They're still, this is the second year we are going without a high school rep right now. So if there are students that are looking to, beef up their college resume and know what's going on. Basically, you end up reporting on what's going on with school athletics and recreation that would fold into the community. So, great time to talk about booster clubs and fundraisers and all that good stuff. The dog park is still working on funding. They do have a website. You can link off of the Parks and Rec website to get to it, but it's merrimackdogpark.org. And they're even trying to have dog play dates for those who are able to play with other dogs off leashes. If your dog is not that dog, my dog isn't. So, just obviously plan accordingly. The fall skate park hours are in effect, which means that instead of a closing time, it's at dusk, because dusk is coming earlier and earlier. There's a ton of fall programs at Parks and Rec for youth as well, youth and adults. There's archery, first aid, CPR, which has an AED component classes available. Youth tennis lessons. There's a horse riding program that they're partnering with a group from Amherst to offer to residents. The Parks and Rec site can be found on merrimacknh.gov. The Parks and Rec Committee is also having a blood drive at Wasserman on Thursday, October 2nd. And the community, 22nd, I think, annual community Halloween party is Friday, October 24th from 5 to 8. They are going to have a new component, which is an after-party screening of Ghostbusters at Wasserman. So that should be cool. And that's it.
Thank you. And any other committee reports? Mr. Schneider.
Yeah, this is just to summarize for the minutes, but on the 25th, Planning and Building met. We obviously went through the ad infinitum, the CIP. They did bring up that as we get closer to looking at all the data and all the options for the consolidation, that they want to work very closely with us in terms of the way we market and propose and all that stuff. So just sort of a heads up that they really want to make this a joint activity of promotion, depending on whatever approach we take. So. And September's kicking up again, so all the other subcommittees and liaison groups are starting to meet again, so it'll be a lot more reports coming up.
Absolutely. Any other reports? Ms. Guglielmi.
Just a quick update. The Budget Committee is expected to meet a week from today on September 9th at 7 p.m. The sole agenda, the major agenda item for that meeting is for the election of a chair and a vice chair of the committee. So that's next week.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Seeing none, we'll move to item number 14, public comments on agenda items. Seeing as it's an empty room, I will close public comments on agenda items. We'll take a moment to sign the manifest, and I will entertain a motion made by Vice Chair Barnes to adjourn, seconded by Ms. Guglielmi. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. None opposed. That motion carries 5-0-0, and I thank everyone, and good night.